What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome to the final regular season hype video for the Philadelphia Eagles. It is a Week 70 matchup that means absolutely nothing for the Philadelphia Eagles except pride. You never want to lose to the Dallas Cowboys, regardless of the situation, regardless of the fact if the Cowboys had a terrible season and Dak Prescott got exposed as trying to not be a super Eagles fan. Dak Prescott got exposed as not the superstar people thought he was going to be, the emerging superstar. I will say that. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback. I don't think it's the end of the line for Dak. It's just beginning, but, you know, the way the hype train was all off season long, definitely failed to live up to those expectations. But still, at the end of the day, there's not a single Eagle fan out there that is going to view this as a meaningless game. It's the Dallas Cowboys. It's at home against, the Philadelphia Eagles. We're trying to go 14-2. Since I've been an Eagles fan, that would be tied for the best record I've ever seen. I want that. So here are the top 10 things to keep an eye on, tips and tricks, matchups, stuff like that, to help you enjoy this ball game. So at number 10, the Dallas Cowboys have Shawn Lee, so anything is possible. According to Dallas Cowboys superfan Skip Bayless, Shawn Lee on the field means Dallas, Dallas probably could have went 16-0 if Shawn Lee was 100% all season long. He's a really, really good player. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's probably the best player on the Dallas Cowboys pound for pound, and, big time ad for them. This year's more of a meme point, just because, Skip Bayless, Shawn Lee love circle. It's quite tumultuous. All right, moving on to point number 9 is that this is really the game of two extremes, I believe. I think if our defense plays good, Dak Prescott is going to look horrible once again, like he did pretty much in the entire second half of the first matchup between the two teams. Or if Philadelphia goes all backups, Dak could go off. I don't think there's a middle ground. I think there's a chance that Dak has, he had a solid game or something like that. I think it's got to be one of the two extremes. Either our backups are going to shut them down, which would be really embarrassing if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, or Dak is going to have a very strong game, and then you're going to have these, while they're sitting on their couch because they're not going to playoffs, saying, oh yeah, Dak's better than Wentz, or something stupid like that. Give them something to hold their hat on from this terrible season that they've had. Point number 8 is that this matchup is really frighteningly similar to last year's finale versus the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys have Dak Prescott, and we don't have Carson Wentz this year. But outside of that, I mean, the meaningless game where the Eagles are the Cowboys of last season. Hopefully, we're not in the playoffs, one and done. But with how we played against the Raiders, I am not eliminating that possibility. It is very likely the Philadelphia Eagles just get, destroyed in their first game in the divisional round of the playoffs. But I mean, this is just kind of weird. It shows the parity in the NFC East. Not everyone has a cupcake division. Say like the Patriots. Say like, I don't know, the Seahawks for quite some time. Not anymore, but let's be honest. It goes all the way back up to the Patriots. I guess this is more so a round of applause for how competitive the NFC East is most seasons, really, of the last 10 years. There's maybe been 2 years that the NFC East wasn't competitive. So that is something that we all, Dallas fan, Eagle fan, Giant fan, Redskin fan, can applaud, is that every NFC East matchup, for the most, 95% NFC East matchups are usually pretty damn competitive. Going to point number 7 is that it looks like the backups will play for the Philadelphia Eagles. And my guesses of the Eagles that won't even step on the field go as so. Brandon Graham, they're going to be trying to heal him up. Zach Ertz, because we have plenty of depth between Brett Selleck and Trey Burton, so we can rest Ertz. Alshon Jeffrey's not going to play. I mean, he's always a guy that's questionable every single week, it still seems like. Even though he hasn't missed a game this year, Alshon Jeffrey would get rested. I think Lane Johnson gets rested. That's not the best ideal scenario, but I feel like if you look at the offensive line, the one guy you can't replace at all is Lane Johnson. So a meaningless game against some pretty good edge rushers. I would rest Lane Johnson. Fletcher Cox, Nigel Bradham, Malcolm Jenkins, Jay Ajayi. I think Ajayi is probably the most likely of all the guys I've mentioned to play. But, yeah, the backups are going to play for Philly. I think with how more often than not, I would rather not sit my starters. I just feel like, especially with that last game against the Raiders, especially on the offense, you don't want that to be the last time everyone played. And that's the kind of momentum that you're bringing into the playoffs. But with how many injuries the Philadelphia Eagles have had, we've combated more injuries than probably any other playoff team in the NFL, I would say. There might be, let's see, the Vikings kind of the Vikings, because they lost their starter at quarterback in Bradford and Dalvin Cook. But I don't know, man. I think there's, I don't know, I could be just completely glossing over a team, but I would say the Eagles have obviously suffered the most hardship. So because of that, you probably have to play it safe, because it seems like the football gods do not want us to be healthy. Going to point number 6 is Nate Sudfeld will sneeze snaps. Let's see if he can steer his ship. Let's be honest, Nick Foles had a terrible game. I'm probably going to have a video at some point talking about alternative quarterback options. Not so much a demand for one, more so an open discussion amongst us Eagle fans. But I believe with this offense, we just need a quarterback that can steer the ship. Nick Foles looked great against the Giants, 4 touchdowns, looked horrific. Maybe one of the worst games the quarterback's ever had for the Eagles against the Raiders. And I think if Nate Sudfeld can go in with predominantly backups against a game Cowboys team that does not want to lose, if Nate Sudfeld somehow, some way can finish with 3 touchdowns, no picks, or something like that, you may have some questions. I mean, for any of you guys that have been with me for, I don't know how many years I've been posting Eagles videos, 5 years, 6 years, I am not a knee-jerk fan. But Nick Foles played bad enough that the door is open for Sudfeld to take over as a starter. And that is not an ideal scenario. Having a guy who, if say he does play well against the Dallas Cowboys, our quarterback going into the playoffs is a guy that's played 1 career playoff game. But seeing how Nick Foles played against the Raiders, it was bad enough that I can't even erase it. I can't even say that's a mulligan. That's how bad Nick Foles' performance was against the Raiders. It wasn't all his fault, but he is the face of this offense, and he's the guy that needs to be able to make it work. It was that bad that you're saying it was like, you know, flash in the pan, hey, remember the game against the Giants? That game was that bad. I think if Sudfeld somehow, some way just doesn't have a terrible game, there might be a chance that if he has a better week of practice, you might want to roll with Foles. With Sudfeld, sorry. So crazier things have happened. I still would say you go with Foles and try to throw it up as a mulligan, even though it's incredibly difficult for me to accept the game against the Raiders as that. Go number 5, Rasul Douglas versus Dez Bryant. That is going to be one hell of a matchup. Rasul Douglas has played very, very well against bigger wide receivers in this year's. I don't know how many games he's played. Started 3 or 4 games, so he's actually featured in heavily. And something needs to change on this team. Looking at this Philadelphia Eagles team ever since the Chicago Bears game, obviously, outside of losing our quarterback, it's just something hasn't looked good. And I know some people are trying to throw it up to like, hey, ever since Darby's got starting minutes at the cornerback spot, our defense has not played as well. I kind of think that's a little bit of a cop-out. I just think that falls on Jim Schwartz. I think Jim Schwartz has got too comfortable with Ronald Darby being on the field, and he's not bringing too much safety help at the pass rush and trying to get in the backfield and not having the safeties actually drop back into coverage. You know what I'm saying? He's getting too aggressive with Ronald Darby. I think that's been the downfall. But if something needs to change, Jalen Mills has been horrific. Ever since the Chicago Bear game, Jalen Mills has been very, very bad. And Rasul Douglas has been very, very good in his snaps. And I think if Rasul Douglas plays really good against Dez Bryant, he should be able to play Jalen Mills out of his spot if he has a strong game. Jalen Mills, not 100% after last week. I think he's picked up a little bit of an injury. He might have came back against the Raiders. Jalen Mills is not bad. He's not a liability, but he's not playing good at all. And Rasul Douglas is a guy that's chomping at the bit. And I believe Rasul Douglas has earned the right to get a lot more snaps than what he's seen. He's been inactive like twice in the last like 5 weeks, which is unacceptable. So I think I would like to see Rasul Douglas, and if he shuts out Dez Bryant, has a strong game against Dez Bryant, I think you roll with them over Jalen Mills. Something needs to change. I think if you continue to do the same thing over and over again that hasn't been working at the cornerback spot for this Philadelphia Eagles team, you're gonna get, expect the same results. It's in the whole insanity quote. So let's see what Rasul Douglas can do against Dez Bryant. Go to number 4 is fire up your Mack Hollins. He is a great matchup against Dallas' small secondary. Unless somehow, some way they put Byron Jones on him, Mack Hollins is every bit the type of guy that can Moss catch over Orlando Scandrick, over Jordan Lewis, over Chidobe Awuzie. I like the matchup there with Mack Hollins. He's probably going to be our most targeted wide receiver. I would assume that you're not going to see, a whole lot of Alshon Jeffrey, if none. Like I said, I predict I think they might just sit him. You're not going to see a whole lot of Nelson Aguilar. So I think this game is going to be a lot of Torrey Smith, a lot of Mack Hollins, probably some Marcus Johnson, someone like that. And I think Mack Hollins, who's been a beast in limited snaps with the Philadelphia Eagles, he could have a big game with the Eagles, find some success with their backups on offense. Number 3 is Jake Elliott. I actually kind of hope our offense struggles a little bit. We had to settle for field goals because I want to see Jake Elliott get a lot more reps under 45 yards. It seems like 45 yards and above, anything really in the 50s and 60s, Jake Elliott can make with ease, but he struggles under 45 yards. He is a rookie kicker. They are going to have ups and downs. They're not going to have a well-rounded kicking game, but let's get him some reps in a meaningless game for these short yardage kicks so we can have a little bit more confidence with them going into the playoffs. Hey, there's even if there is a negative and the offense sputters and doesn't really execute a lot, doesn't convert opportunities into touchdowns, there's still a positive because hopefully maybe we can get a little bit more consistency out of our kicker with his short range kicks. Go to point number 2. I'm recording this on a Wednesday, so there's no official report, but it looks like Sidney Jones might make his Philadelphia Eagles debut. That's hype, man. I am actually absolutely hyped to watch that. Sidney Jones was tied for my #1 corner in this year's draft class with Marcel Lattimore. We've all seen the success Marcel Lattimore's had with the Saints. And if Sidney Jones can even be close to that, we're laughing. Marcel Lattimore is playing like a top 5 corner, a top 10 corner, depending on how overzealous you want to be on his rookie production. If we can get top 20 production from Sidney Jones as a rookie, I mean, obviously it's too late now, but well, I guess next year's pretty much his rookie season. We're laughing, absolutely laughing. A 2nd-round pick balling out like that, so I'm very excited. Hopefully he does play. It probably will be, you know, eased in a little bit, but if we play a lot of our backups, we pull Patrick Robinson, we pull Ronald Darby, it's going to be a lot of Rasul Douglas, a lot of Sidney Jones. I'm ready, man. I want to see what they can do. I want to see what the kid can do. Hopefully get some snaps. And the #1 point is Nick Foles needs to play a half. There is no way, no rhyme or reason, based off of what he did against the Raiders, that Nick Foles gets to sit this game. He does nothing that says, you know, we don't know what we have in Nick Foles. We saw the Nick Foles against the Giants. We saw the Nick Foles against the Raiders. Give him a half. Give him some opportunities. Sure, there's not going to be, you know, a lot of the starters probably won't be playing on the offense, but let him get a couple good positive drives going, and don't make the last thing that he touched on this Eagles was the drives against the Raiders. That is no way to start your playoffs after, what, we're going to have a couple weeks rest. You got to get Nick Foles at least, at the very minimum, he should have 3 drives. I don't know if that's the entirety of the first half. I think 3 drives for Nick Foles. And if he struggles in those drives, you keep his ass out there. I don't even care if there's backups. If Nick Foles struggles, there is no difference, in my opinion, between him and any other scrub quarterback we can have. You cannot have had a worse performance than what he did against the Raiders. So Nick Foles has to put, say, you give him 3 drives to start. If you can have 2 out of 3 of those drives end up in scoring, being a touchdown or a field goal, fine, pull him. He's our guy. If he struggles, it's a battle, man. Give Nick Foles the first half, get Nate Sudfeld the second half, see what happens from that. And MVP for this game, I'm going with Rasul Douglas. I'm very hyped to see what Rasul Douglas can do. He's a great matchup against Dez Bryant. Hopefully, it all works out for him. So yeah, that does it for the hype video for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Dallas Cowboys. I am worried. All in all, I would be worried with the first round bye, even with Carson Wentz, because the Eagles have shown after a bye week we are slow starters, and if you start out slow against a playoff caliber team, you're not going to be able to fight back into that game, which is what we had to do against Dallas. That was our bye this year, and we started out, our first half against the Dallas Cowboys, match 1 was horrific, let alone what we do against a legit playoff caliber team, not a Dak Prescott-led, weak-ass, limp offense. So, you know, there's a whole lot. That's another video, another time, another place. Thank you for watching. As always, it's your first time stopping by. Don't be afraid of that subscribe button. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out and fly, Eagles fly.